Good afternoon. This is Lydia Ford. My grief counseling service is called Grace to Win, and I call it that because I want you to win. I help people who are lost, or I should say, who are stuck in grief to get unstuck. And that's why the service is called Grace to Win. I want you to know that your purpose, God's plan for your life is never tied to anything that you have lost, whether it's a person, place, or a thing. And God doesn't just want you to eke out a living. He doesn't just want you to cope with your grief and loss. He doesn't just want you to survive it. He wants you to thrive. And previously on my talk regarding grief, I tried to clarify the fact that grief um, and the losses that you have gone through over a period of time, over your lifetime, really, because we all experience some type of loss, whether it's loss of a loved one, loss of acuity, loss of mental health, loss of physical health, loss through let's see, through stillborn births, loss in terms of miscarriage. Loss can also be described when children have to be removed from their biological parents. Loss from veterans that come home with PTSD, loss of limbs, loss of sight. Oh my God, through going through the diagnosis of cancer or the diagnosis of dementia, elderly people, not so much elderly now because people can be diagnosed with beginning stages of dementia as early as 45, 50. But all of those things I just mentioned are types of loss. And so we don't want you, I don't want you to have to just cope with your feelings, your sorrow, your pain, the emotions that derive because you are experiencing trauma and crisis. I want you to win. I want you to thrive. I want you to be able to accept the loss. I want you to be able to feel the pain of the loss. I want you to be able to go through the process of adjusting to a world without the deceased. If that's the type of loss you are experiencing or have experienced, you have to be able to adjust to a world without that thing, that person, place, or thing that you've lost. And then finally going through the process of being able to memorialize, being able to accept, being able to celebrate, as well as continue on with your life. All right. Celebrating and remembering that thing, that person, that place that you lost while still embarking on your journey, while still going forward to obtaining the best that you can become, whether it's in the secular world or if it's in the church. God doesn't want you stuck. All right. He doesn't want you lost in your past. He wants you to keep moving forward so that you can become what he has destined and chosen for you to become before the foundation of the world. And that's what we believe as Christians, as a Christian counselor. That is what I believe. So previously, we talked about the fact I wanted you to understand the distinction in the mourning process, because there's something flying around me right now. There are three terms that we need to actually know the definition of it. I'm just going to go back over them briefly. When we talk about mourning, we say mourning, somebody is in mourning. We use that to indicate the process that occurs after a loss by which a bereaved person comes to terms with their loss. Now, grief, the definition of grief, on the other hand, refers to a person's reaction to bereavement. And those reactions are comprised of your thoughts, your feelings, and your behaviors, the feelings, and the thoughts that you experience after the loss. And sometimes these will change. More often, they change over time. All right. Grief reactions can change over time. And then we talk about another part of the mourning process. We talk about bereavement. Okay. Bereavement has to do see, where am I? We talk about mourning, we talk about grief, we talk about bereavement as well, which is the state of going through the loss of a loved one. All right, the state of going through the loss of a loved one. People are in bereavement. I believe I captured all three of those. If not, I will clarify. But also previously in my other Facebook lives, I talked about the fact that grief, the process of understanding it, the process of admitting it, the process of dealing with it and moving forward, is what we call grief work. um, it's task, and tasks are jobs, and jobs have to do with work. Process, there's a strategy, there's work that has to be done, that has to be employed to get you on the other side of your grief, of your mourning, of your pain, of your emotional reactions to grief. So previously, I described the task involved in grieving. And that first task, number one, was to accept the reality of the loss. We talked about that. The next task was to process the pain of grief. All right. And today I want to talk about the third task, which is to adjust to a world without the deceased. Okay, so for these broadcasts, we're specifically talking about losses as it relates to the death of a loved one, a friend, someone you admired. All right, so we're on task number 3, and there are 3 areas of adjustment that need to be addressed after the loss of a loved one to death. And I want to talk to you about these 3 adjustments. There is the external adjustment, or how the death affects one's everyday functioning, how you function in your world from day to day. Then there's the internal adjustments, which means how the death affects your sense of self. How does that death event affect your self-worth? And then there's the spiritual adjustment, or how the death affects your beliefs, how it affects your values and assumption about the world. So we're going to take it one step at a time, one adjustment at a time. This is called grief work, y'all. Task 3, you have to adjust to a world without the person that you once loved, that was in the earth realm, all right, that you were connected to. So the first adjustment that you have to make is called external adjustments. This is what we're talking about. Adjusting to a new environment without the deceased means different things to different people, and what the relationship was with the deceased and the various roles that the deceased played in your life. It takes a considerable period of time for many widows, of which I am and was one and still am one, to realize what it is like to live without their husbands. It is not a piece of cake. There were things that used to just throw me off. There were little things that I never had to do as a wife that my husband always did. Anything that had to do with changing the oil in the car, anything dealing with fixing the car, all I did was put the key in and expected it to start and keep it moving. But I mean, simple things such as changing the battery in the fire alarm, and up on the ceiling, changing a bulb, putting up curtain rods, things that in the natural I really could do. I'm not that dumb, but I didn't want to do it, or I didn't have to do it because my husband always did it. And when he was no longer available, when he was no longer around, I would just cry. I would cry. I would lose it because I wasn't used to doing it. He was the one that always did it. All right. He was the one that always did it. So let me go on. It takes a considerable period of time for many widows to realize what it is like to live without their husbands. This realization often begins to emerge around 3 to 4 months after the loss, and it involves coming to terms with living alone, raising kids alone, facing an empty house alone, managing your finances alone. And it makes an important Parks, one of our experts in the area of this particular topic, makes an important point. When he says this, in any bereavement, it is seldom clear exactly what is of a husband, for example, may or may not mean the loss of a sexual partner, a companion, an accountant, a gardener, baby minder, audience, bed warmer, and so on, depending on the particular roles normally performed by this husband. Everybody's relationship with their husband is different. Mine was different than X, Y, or Z. So based on your relationship and the role that that husband or that wife played is going to be measured against the external adjustment that you have to make. I manage my money. Okay. I had a bank account. I managed and we co-paid bills together. All right. That wasn't a problem. When my children were younger, we co-parented together. When we were together, we engaged in activities, sexual activities together. All right. And so depending on your role, the role that person played in your life, then you're going to have to make adjustments when that person is not fulfilling that role anymore. You all hear the words coming out of my mouth. The survivor usually is not aware of all the roles played by the deceased until sometime after the loss occurred. So after the loss occurred, and I was left with a car, a second haircut, it wasn't a brand new car, when I was lost with things that were broken down in the house, when there was mold in the house, when we had to refinance our loan, our mortgage. I wasn't used to doing all of that. So I would cry. Or I would have to reach out to one of my friends. I thank God for the Hanukkahs, the man and the woman, the husband and the wife that became my best friends. They became like my brother and my sister. And whenever I needed help, they were there, Johnny on the spot. And there were some other people as well. So many survivors resent having to develop new skills and take on roles that were formerly performed by their partners. An example of this is Margot, and I'm reading this book that a class that I'm taking. So he's given the example. Mr. William Warden is the author of this book that in this course, Grief Counseling and Grief Therapy. So there was a woman, her name was Margot. She was a young mother whose husband died. He was the type of person who was very efficient, took charge of situations and did most of the things for her. Watch this. But after his death, one of the children got into trouble in school, necessitating a meeting with the guidance counselor. Previously, the husband would have made contact with the school and handled everything. But after his death, Margot was forced to develop this skill. I said she was forced to develop this skill, although she developed it and with resentment. She did come to the awareness that she liked having the skill to handle such a situation competently, and that she would never have accomplished this had her husband still been alive. Many things, even in my own life, I didn't feel I had the competency to achieve it, to do it. But once I had to, because nobody else was there to do it, I developed the competency in lots of areas that I normally would not have developed in had he still been there. Listen, the coping strategy of redefining the loss in such a way that it can redound to the benefit of the survivor is often part of the successful completion of task number 3, which again, adjusting to a world without the deceased. There are many husbands who lose their wives. An example, my son-in-law lost his wife, lost my daughter when she was shy of her 30th birthday. My daughter had given birth to a baby 14 months before she actually died. 2 months after she had our granddaughter, Jayla, she was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer. She only lived 14 months, leaving her husband behind to make adjustments, to learn how to cook. All right. He cooked a little, but he had to do more cooking, and not just for him, but he had to make sure that he was giving his daughter, my granddaughter, the nutritional food that was necessary as a little toddler. He had to make sure her hair was combed. Okay. He had to make sure that he took her to her physicians, her doctors. She's still a baby. She's just a toddler. He had to make sacrifices of his time. He had to find someone actually to do her hair. All right. If you can't do it, then you have to make plans. You got to go searching out and find some extra help, find that village. Okay. When he was working, he had to work. He had to find someone to take care of little Jayla. So it's not just on the woman's side when they lose a husband. It's on the man's side. And he was a young man. He was only 29, 30 years old when he lost his wife, my daughter. So the coping strategy of redefining the loss in such a way that it can redound to the benefit of the survivor is often a part of a successful completion to task 3. Making sense of the loss and finding benefits from the loss are 2 dimensions of meaning making after a loss. And this certainly relates to the issue of finding a benefit from the death. Yes, God, there often is a benefit. Sometimes God uses misery, suffering, traumatic events in your life to jumpstart the purpose. All right. The purpose that has been laying dormant in your life for years, but somehow through grief, somehow through pain, somehow through suffering, God allows that thing that he put in you to be agitated, to be jump started, to get you out of mediocrity and to bring you into a place of new purpose. Okay. I know it sounds crazy, but I became an author after I lost my daughter and my husband. I became to use technology, which I'm using right now. Never thought I would be a digital creator. Never thought I would have a platform on Facebook. Never thought I would have to preach and do my pastoring on Facebook, y'all. Do you all hear the words coming out of my mouth? All right. There is a benefit from death. God doesn't waste nothing. He doesn't waste the good and he doesn't waste the bad. He's able to do everything and to bring us into completeness, to bring about the best you that he already ordained before the foundation of the world. A current theory that has been championed by Niemeyer 2001-2016 and many others is the need to make meaning after loss. Meaning making is an important process for the grieving deaths that tend to challenge beliefs about oneself, others in the world. Because guess what? Death can shatter the core of your life's purpose. And it is important to discover and invent and reinvent and reimagine a new you after the loss of a loved one. After the loss of a loved one, there's a new you that God wants to bring into the earth realm. There's a new you. You can't get stuck in loss. You cannot believe and hold on to the premise that the thing that almost drove you crazy, that made you cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs, is the thing that's going to linger and lag in your life to keep you from becoming the best you that God wants to bring into a new relationship with yourself and with others that are waiting for you to bust a move. There are people waiting for you. You have the solution to somebody's problem. Yes, even after you've experienced loss, even after you've experienced crisis after crisis after crisis, there is a new you down on the inside. And all you need is a strategy. All you need is someone. You need a spiritual mother. You need a mentor. You need a coach to work with, to give you strategies, not just to help you to cope with the loss over time. You don't need a step 1, step 2, but you need someone that will speak, that will speak to the little girl that is in you, that's been submerged under pain and suffering and rejection and anger and bitterness. You need help to get you unstuck. And that's why I was created. I didn't know it at the time that I was created to help someone that is stuck in grief to get unstuck. I only learned that after I suffered a while. I only learned that after I had to go through pain year after year, nursing and rehearsing, being a victim of my circumstances, or believing I was a victim, believing that God did not answer my prayer in the way I wanted to. All right. So the first step in task number 3 to adjust to a world without the deceased is to understand the external adjustments that have to be made, all right, in your life after that person is no longer to do the thing that they used to do for you. You have to get up and you have to learn some new skills, some new strategies. You got to enlarge your territory. You got to enlarge your tent. You got to enlarge your village. And you may have to ask. I know we don't like to ask because we're full of pride sometimes, but you have not because you ask not. That's in the Bible, okay? Sometimes you're going to have to humble yourself and ask for help. Like my son-in-law had to ask for help. He needed a village to help raise his daughter, my granddaughter. He had his mom, okay? He had his mother-in-law, me. He had some other people from the church. Y'all don't hear me. You have to humble yourself and you have to do what you need to do in order to get on the other side of your pain. All right. In order to live your best life, you have to go through these external adjustments. And I think that's about it for today. When I come back, I'm going to talk about not just the external adjustments that need to be made, but I'm going to talk about the internal adjustments that have also to be made. All right, Lydia Ford, everything is scrolling at the bottom here. You need to get in touch with me. If you or somebody you know that is stuck in grief and needs to get unstuck, they need a mentor, a coach. They need strategies to help them, not just to cope and survive. No, to thrive and to win. That's why my consultation, my grief consultation, win. And I don't know why this StreamYard is going in and out today, but it is. But, we have to ignore technology because sometimes technology does what it does. But anyway, look at what's scrolling at the bottom. Those are ways to get in touch with me. You can also DM me on my Facebook page, Lydia Ford, and it's Lydia with a Y. Go to my website, www.thegracetowin. You can sign up for a 30-minute consultation. If you or someone you know needs a push, needs strategies, need help in dealing with your grief and getting on the other side, knowing that your future is never tied to anything that you've lost, whether it's a person, place, or thing. God has an exceptional, awesome, wonderful plan for your life still, regardless of ethnicity, regardless of culture, regardless of race, regardless of position in life. God has more, and you need to expect more. You need to expect more from yourself. I just came out of a 5-day class on expect more challenge with Coach Beverly Vaughn. And I'm riled up. I'm stirred up. I don't want to stop even at the level that I am right now as a spiritual coach. I'm getting my credentials to become a certificate, have a certificate in grief counseling. I don't even want to stop there because guess what? There is more. God expects us to do, wants to do exceedingly abundantly above all we could ask or think in our lives. Don't get stuck. Doesn't matter how old you are. Doesn't matter what your sex is. Doesn't matter where you came from. God is with you, so who can be against you? But he expects you to put in the work. It's just not going to fall from heaven. You have to do the work to get on the other side of grief and pain and the losses. You got to put in the grief work. And that's what I expect my clients to do when they sign on board with me. All right, enough. I'm coming back to talk about the internal adjustments. And that's task number 3. That's job number 3. That's grief work number 3. How to adjust to a world without the deceased. I'll be back. Please share this video. Thank you for watching.